Commentators find homiletical insights in this usage. Among them, in his monumental humility, Moses wished to describe God's revelation to him with the same uncomplimentary words used for Balaam without an aleph, but God instructed him to include the aleph as an expression of affection. Too humble to do so wholeheartedly, Moses wrote a small aleph, Ba'al HaTurim. The smallness is meant to give prominence to the letter as if it were a separate word. The word aleph means to teach, thus implying that one should strive always to be small and humble. No man was better qualified to teach the lesson than Moses, who was not only the greatest of all prophets, but the humblest person who ever lived. That's based on Rav Bunam of Chischa.
Good. So they're all agreed that that little aleph in the first word in Leviticus 1:1 is about the humility of Moses as God calls Moses, but it also can be, some other commentators say the aleph is a silent call because aleph is a letter without any sound. So there can be a silent call that one can experience when God calls a person. And that is another aspect of the aleph. Um, so that's just something to note here at the beginning of the Torah portion. So we're sitting at the beginning of the book of Leviticus, and that book is primarily focusing on ritual sacrifice as a way to come close to God and mark holy times and sanctifying moments. There are many examples of animal and vegetable sacrifice that were meaningful for our ancestors, which seem foreign to us and sometimes quite strange. The ancients might have thought that the gods must be fed and that human beings need to demonstrate gratitude to God in concrete ways. And the text goes on and looks at quite a lot of ritual sacrifice. The word is korban, which really literally comes from the Hebrew lekarev, to come close. So when people offered a sacrifice, they felt that they were coming close to God. Um, we can read this first paragraph, basically up to root 4 or 5, and then I'm going to continue with us on chapter 5 because I'm more interested in some of the ethical issues than some of these ritual issues. Would anybody like to read the first few lines in the Torah, 1:1 through 1:5, please? I can't quite see you. Raise your hand with the hand raising function. Oh, great. Take it away, Rebecca.
I have a Christian interpretation of the Tanakh. The Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any man of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of cattle from the herd or from the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it at the door of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted, for him to make atonement for him. Then he shall kill the bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall present the blood and throw the blood around about against the altar that is at the door of the tent of meeting."
Maybe read 1 or 2 more.
"And he shall flay the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. And the sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and lay wood in order upon the fire. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall lay the pieces, the head and the fat in order upon the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. But its entrails and its legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall burn the whole on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord.
So what we've got here is some kind of holy barbecue. And it's used here as a way to come close to God. And God accepts this burnt offering. And here's the description of what must be done. It's not too different in the commentary I have on my left, which is the Plout translation. And does anybody have the Women's Torah commentary, page 571? Because Mary Douglas, the anthropologist, makes an interesting comment. Would somebody read that, please? Howard, you look like you're thinking.
That's unusual.
You wouldn't even get up to turn off the lights.
Does anybody see that here, page 571, the anthropologist in the women's commentary? Well,
Cindy's
okay,
has
Mara
I
and
do.
Harv. Mara, take it away. Unmute, please.
I defer to Cindy.
Okay. The anthropologist Mary Douglas observes that the arrangement of the offerings on the altar recreates a movement from the outside of the animal's body to the center and toward greater holiness. A similar journey takes place as a person enters the tabernacle or as Moses ascends Mount Sinai. Douglas also notes the relationship between what is offered on the altar and what a person may eat. The meat that one may offer God is the same as that which one may eat. The parallels make the human body an analog to the tabernacle, a holy place designated for serving God.
What do you think of that? Any comments on that? That the body is a sanctuary. Marv and Mara.
Um, also, it suggests the later rules for kashrut to also make the body a sanctuary.
Good. Yes. And it's an interesting thing. Mary Douglas tries to understand this ancient ritual in terms of its symbolic meaning that might be found universally in religion. That making that holy place that we make for God's presence is a holy place within our own body. That we carry some of God's presence in who and what we are. So I thought that was an interesting element. I am more interested, however, in going to chapter 5.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I just have an interesting thought, excuse me, in that it's the core. It's the core of the animal that's being presented in the center of the altar, which means then that we are taking in God into our core being versus our head.
Ah, interesting. Meaning the core, the central part of our guts, our heart, our full presence, as opposed to only the intellect. David Caden.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also the fact that blood is dashed against the altar. Blood is life, and of course, tying into what someone mentioned about the kashrut, we don't eat blood, we don't eat blood red meat, etc. So that's part of maybe a predecessor of it, or just showing how since blood is life for all beings, and then they're dashing it against the altar. And is the altar, is the ark on top of the altar behind the curtain, or is this a different altar?
This is in front of.
Got it.
Yes. We're in the tent of meeting, then we got the altar, and behind that, the curtain.
Thank you.
So all of these things were rather dramatic religious rituals. Our religious rituals are not so dramatic in these days, and we're not offering animals or burnt offerings, or throwing blood on an altar, but we have a different way to come close to God. Some people like that drama. Jewish tradition has evolved over time and differentiate religious practice from physical sacrifice to coming close to God through words and spoken prayer and silent prayer. And it's a different kind of coming close. Any other comments on that section? Otherwise, I'd like to go to talk about something that relates to behavior. And that's, let's start on chapter 5, verse 17. In the clout, that's page 672. In the women's commentary, that's 586. And in a time, that's 604.
What is the chapter and verse?
The chapter is chapter Leviticus 5:17. So this is going to be, Howard, do you see it? Leviticus 5:17.
On camera or not?
No. I don't think that.
Is somebody, you want to read it, Steve? Or
Mona wants to read.
what's your wife's name?
Mona.
Mona, please, would you read 5:17?
Yes, thank you. And a person who, without knowing it, sins in regard to any of the Eternal's commandments about things not to be done, and then realizes guilt, such a person shall be subject to punishment. That person shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock, or the equivalent, as a reparation offering.
Let's
For the
stop
error-
there. Stop right there. So we've got something going on here. What was the person doing?
Whatever it was not a conscious error.
They realized I made a mistake. They sinned without knowing it, and then they kind of woke up and said, "Ah, I shouldn't have cut in front of the guy on the freeway. I shouldn't have, uh, you know, put those extra,
Shot my neighbor.
whatever. I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have been impatient with my child. I feel badly about it. I should not have spoken that way to one of my clients." So the person is feeling the guilt. But the Torah says they still have to be raised, have an accountability, right? They shall have some kind of punishment. And then we'll go to the punishment as a reparation for that. So, Brad, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, why do you think it talks about things not to be done? What about being punished for things that should be done that you're not doing?
Give me an example.
Well, observing Shabbat.
Good.
I mean, we have all the mitzvot.
Observing kashrut.
about things that you should be doing.
That maybe we would rewrite this section. This part is really the things that are not done. But I think you're right. In contemporary understanding, we would think about the things that we have not done and perhaps should. And then once we have that realization of responsibility, should we then bring some kind of a reparation offering? Thank you. Let's see, Steve Miller, I see your hand.
Does this really apply to every commandment? If you kill your neighbor, is this all you have to do is bring an unblemished ram and all is well?
Well, bring an animal for the flock as a reparation offering. So the question is, do you have to acknowledge it with its name? I'm doing this because neighbor, I cut down your tree.
My question has to do with the gravity of the sin. I killed my neighbor.
Ah,
But
I think that's a different kind of sin. And we can get to it, but right here it's saying if you kill your neighbor and you didn't realize it, that would be
Okay.
a certain kind of person if you didn't
Right. But if
realize
it were murder, you would have to realize it by definition.
it would, in terms of the early commandments, yes, it would be a life for a life. But here I think they're looking at a different kind of damage. And so actually which one is this? In the women's commentary, it says these laws echo the Decalogue, as we're saying, page 585, and also the repetition in Deuteronomy 5, 6 through 18, in crimes against another person are considered as crimes against God. And require reparation. Maria Scheinberg, I see your hand.
I think there are different kinds of guilt. So I believe in previous book in Exodus, we were told that for not observing Shabbat, a person will be stoned to death. And we read about life for life and eye for eye. So these will be punishments for not keeping the 10 commandments. And there were also a description of punishments if somebody accidentally kills an animal or a person, and there are cities where they will be banished. But this is a different thing. This is not for something doing, but something was not done in error, or so it's a different kind of guilt. It's a different kind of misbehavior, I believe.
So they would say not intentional. So if you look at the commentary, 14 through 16, oh no, we're below 17 through 19. Let's keep reading the next part because I think that will get to what we're talking about in a clearer way. Would somebody read Leviticus 20 through 24? I'm not seeing any hands here. Leviticus 20 through 24. In the Plout. Okay, David, take it away. Unmute, please.
The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, When a person sins and commits a trespass against the Eternal by dealing deceitfully with another in the matter of a deposit or a pledge, or through robbery or by defrauding another, or finding something lost and lying about it. If one swears falsely regarding any one of the various things that someone may do and sin thereby, when one has thus sinned and, realizing guilt, would restore either that which was gotten through robbery or fraud, or the entrusted deposit, or the lost thing that was found, or anything else about which one swore falsely, that person shall repay the principal amount and add a fifth part to it. One shall pay it to its owner upon realizing guilt. Then that person shall bring to the priest, as a penalty to the Eternal, a ram without blemish from the flock, or the equivalent, is a reparation offering. The priest shall make expiation before the Eternal on behalf of that person, who shall be forgiven for whatever was done to draw blame thereby.
So let's break this down a bit, okay? So we've got, first of all, we've got a person here. When a person sins and commits a trespass against God by doing things against other human beings. So when we steal from another or deposit something that isn't there or make a pledge to pay a commitment and don't do it, or rob somebody, it's a sin against a human being and it's a sin against God. So let's look at the commentaries. Somebody have here in the Plowed, under the text, verse 21, in the description of what this is.
Yes, sins and commits a trespass against the Eternal. To injure a member of the community is to commit trespass against God, and trespass is taking something holy for one's own use.
What does that mean? Taking something holy for one's own use. When a person robs their neighbor and takes their best goat, they're taking not just the animal, but the essence of what that is, and that probably its future economic contribution to the family. And that is holy. It's not just robbing a thing. It's robbing something that has a kedusha to it.
Well, also, isn't it everything we have, whether we earned it or, well, say, especially since we earned it, it's not really our work that earned it. We did work and we did earn it. We did work hard no matter what we did, or we worked easily, but everything can be traceable to God. So basically, but for God, we wouldn't have had the blessing to be alive, to be able to work, to earn, or achieve whatever we've received. So I think that's basically saying everything is holy.
Great. So everything has a holiness to it. And there's an interesting comment also in the Plowed of a pledge. If you make a pledge for your dues for the synagogue, you are placing something in the hand of a person, but it's not there yet. That pledge is entrusted, and the one who is the giver and the one who is the receiver, jointly own that property once the pledge is made. And so there becomes another sin against people and against the process. Steve Miller, I see your hand.
There's a very long commentary on this verse in my version, and one of the interesting things it says is that with respect to a financial obligation, the only people that really know about it are the two persons involved in the deal and God. And so if you breach that, you are actually breaching also and committing a sin against God, because he's the only, I don't want to say person, but
Being.
source or being of knowledge, and you're denying God when you breach this agreement with another person.
Interesting. It would be as if God is the third eye, the witness.
Right.
You make this deal, but you're not just doing it, in a corner parking lot. There's an eye that's watching you. God as witness. Yes.
I was wondering, is there a difference between expiation and reparation? In these verses that we've been reading, sometimes they use expiation, and it's and other times they're saying you have to do this to make reparation. And I mean, one sounds more transactional. The reparation sounds more like a transaction, and the expiation seems to be sort of erasing your record and restoring some kind of level of moral purity. But
What's the
I
Hebrew word?
I would have to look those up, and I would want to see what the Hebrew is, because I think the Hebrew is the same. And when we're making reparation, that is a religious term. And it comes from the idea of repair. When we're making a repair to the person from the sin that we made. And if we have any lawyers here who can tell us the difference between reparation and expiation, the
They're
priest
just an
there, the regular person is doing a reparation offering. But in verse 26, the Kohen shall make expiation. But if I would look at the Hebrew, okay, at Ashmato, the guilt offering Yavo Ladonai, Ayel Tamin Minatson Le'erka Le'asham, as the worth of the guilt to be given to the priest. V'yichaper alav Kohen, and the Kohen will make atonement before God. So expiation here is making atonement before God on behalf of the person. So in this English, reparation seems to be the word used for regular folks, but the priest makes expiation, which is v'kaper alav kohen, that he's doing the kapara, the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. He is making the kapara for the sin. Any other, like, what does the Eitz Chaim say on this? Who usually has
Well, the Eitz is saying what Steve basically said about the witness. To cheat another person is to sin against God as well as against that person. It is worse to rob a fellow human being than to steal from God. Akiva taught that whenever two people enter into an agreement, each is relying on the divine dimension of the other, the part of a person that is the image of God and knows what is right and what is wrong, making God a witness to every transaction. To betray that trust is to deny the divine image in ourselves and to deny God's participation in our activities.
that's terrific and interesting. How would that work in education? If you are training your child not to steal from the kid next door, even though he likes a toy that's over there, what would it be to bring God into that conversation with a child? Is that good education? Is it too heavy? Any educators out there?
Susie has her hand up.
Okay.
You're muted, Susie. Susie, you're muted.
Here I go. I've taught little kids for many, many years.
Right.
And I raised a daughter, and my parents raised me. And I think it's not a good idea to instill in children a fear of God. That if they take the toy and you find it when you get home and you say, this is Johnny's toy, it's not yours, God's going to punish you. I think that's personally, I think that's awful, awful. And then if this is instilled and continue, I'm having trouble with these passages about taking care of being an honest person. And if I'm not, if I do something accidentally or something that God would not approve of, I don't want to feel like God's going to punish me. I want to come to the realization that I did something that was not honorable, and I have to deal with that myself. I save God's influence really for higher things. I can't give you an example of what the higher things are right now, but it's not, the higher thing is not, if I come home and I find somebody's watch in my purse and I don't, a very bad example, but I'm not going to say God's going to punish me. I'm going to say I'm going to return this on my own and suffer the dishonesty that I have it until I return it, if I ever do. Does that make any sense?
So you're saying there's something in being human.
Yes.
We want to be honorable of other human beings and say, I made a mistake, or I took this from you and I shouldn't have. I'm giving it back. And so your 5-year-old's going to take the nail polish back to the store and say, I took it, and they're going to remember. But you're saying keep God out of it. Thank you. Mara, I see your hand.
So I'm going to respond to that by saying that if we are to be a sanctuary, then that means that we must behave in the ways that God sets out for us. So I don't see, I agree with Susie that you don't say God will punish you. But I think we have the responsibility to talk to children about what God expects of us in terms of making ourselves that sanctuary and behaving in ways that God expects us to. So we ask our children to think of positive ways of being rather than thinking about punishment.
And perhaps educating is one early stage, and that would be different than dealing with an adult who actually had stolen significant things. But learning, you want to encourage the child to have that full sense of you make a mistake or you even did something that you shouldn't have done, so you know the next time and you won't. We're going to give you the opportunity to be a full person and say, I'm sorry. Now that's our way of saying, making reparation today. It's I'm sorry, and or Yom Kippur on steroids is I'm sorry. Steve Miller, your hand is
I
up.
yeah, I don't. I think Susie this isn't about God's punishment. If you go back to 517, I do something wrong, I realize it, so now I have a guilty conscience, and this is providing me a way of paying back. God isn't punishing me. If you go, it says, I unintentionally did this. Now I realize it. This is what I can do to make amends for what I did by accident. I do it to God, but it's not God's punishment. It's my way of cleansing my guilty conscience.
What you are saying is that I walk away from something that I did or said, and I'm thinking about it. I gain awareness. I go back and say, I didn't want to do that. It was not my, it wasn't well thought out. I take responsibility. Now, in the text, they don't just leave it between the people because the Kohen gets involved. And,
But
but
only because I involved him.
yes, we are saying we look at it differently today, and we don't have a Kohen to make the kapara for us. We are saying to our neighbor, I'm sorry, or I'll pay for the tree that fell down when I drove into it. Naked concrete. Brad, I see your hand.
Also had something to say.
Rabbi, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but what would you say to that child who took the toy? I mean, I can't, I don't, I'm lost as to what I would say, how to bring God into that discussion. Can can you tell me what you would say?
Well, I'm going to think back. My kids are in their 40s now. I've taught a lot of kids in a lot of confirmation classes, but one of the things is to say you have a responsibility when you make a mistake to go to somebody and ask for forgiveness. And where's God? God gives you that awareness that you did something wrong. You are mindful that you should not behave that way. And that's part of a spiritual experience of how does God guide me? God may guide me in my awareness that comes later. God may guide me in and being able to say I'm sorry with depth and with meaning. God may guide me the next time to not lose my patience and not drive into that guy's tree. So I think God is in the awareness and then the human ability to say, I made a mistake and and I can change. I have that potential. Now, with a child, I'm with Susie. I'm not going to lay it up too heavy on a 5-year-old. Forget it. But if I'm talking about a teenager who's told, let's get real, what's medicine for ADHD? Those Ritalin and other uppers.
Adderall.
Right. So teenagers have been known to steal somebody else's medicine because it gives them an up. If they come to you and they talk about it, then you have to say, well, how did you know you did something wrong? Where are you finding your sense of guilt? Is your awareness that this behavior was damaging to you and the other person who may need the ADHD medicine just to be able to go to school every day? Can you see where you were wrong? Is there something in our tradition that helps you realize that God is in the awareness of and the distinction between dark and light, between right and wrong? But I think that takes an adolescent who is open to feedback, or an adult who's open to feedback, and some are, and some aren't. Okay, I see a few other hands. Steve and Mona Miller. Who else is
It's
hand
Mona.
up?
I want to say something else. It's Susan.
Okay, Susie.
I don't know how this fits in, but everyone in the world is not Jewish. And everyone in the world doesn't look at God the way we do. Are we saying that an atheist who takes something that doesn't belong to them, doesn't have a conscience, where do we go with we're being
Good question.
to God,
Good question.
loyal to ourselves? Because there are good people who don't use God as
Right.
a ruler.
And there are plenty of Jews who are secular, and there are plenty of secular people in this country we live in. Is there something valuable that a human being can see in another human being? And that's what you're saying. And have a consciousness that I have a responsibility to my neighbor. And that consciousness leads me to an upright behavior where I'm going to care about them. And I'm not going to drive into their tree when I'm angry that it's on my property or other things. That what kind of consciousness can we develop about kindness and responsibility? Now, it may the in our text here, it's teaching that God is a deeper source in terms of giving us a way to ask for forgiveness when we've done wrong, when we realize it. A person doesn't have to have a godly framework, but we're reading a text that is an ancient holy text that says, this is part of it, but they're trying to deal with human interaction. And that's what makes it, for me, much more interesting than throwing blood on the side of the Aron. I'm going to take one more comment, and then I want to go. We are sitting here a week before Pesach, and I want to get to some questions I've prepared to share with you. Yeah, Mona.
I was really thinking about how you talk to the child. And I think the way to talk to the child is to say, you wouldn't like it if this kid took your toy.
Yeah.
So imagine how he feels that, his favorite toy is gone. How would you feel if somebody took your toy? I actually think the golden rule and, do not do to others things you would not want done to yourself. That is something that kids can get.
Right, but how's that bringing God into it? That's the question.
Because if you teach ethics, if you teach morals, if you teach honor, and I think this also goes to Susie's point that this is not, a sense of right and wrong is not unique to the Jewish people. You can convey that. It's just that we happen to do it as Jews in a context of B'Tselem Elohim, everything in the image of God, that the highest parts of our nature and our consciousness are reflections of the divine. But not everybody else sees it that way. But I do think that's how you would approach the child.
Thank you. Mara?
Just a brief comment that just because people profess to not believe in a God doesn't mean that God doesn't believe in everybody.
Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you. And I'm going to slide over from this Torah portion. We are, a week before Pesach, and some of you may be doing Seders at home or going to Seders. There are many Haggadot. They're available online for different kinds of approaches. But I used to write 10 questions for Pesach every year. I didn't do 10, but I thought these are 3 that you might see that might be of interest to you in a Seder that you're going to. Would somebody read number 1?
Redeeming captives, it's Susie. Redeeming captives. The redemption of captives takes priority over supporting and clothing the poor. There's no greater mitzvah than redemption of captives, for captives are counted among the hungry, thirsty, naked, and those whose lives are in danger. No mitzvah is greater than Pidyon Shivayim,
Louis.
Mishnah Torah, Rabam, Hilshot Matanan Anim 8:10. Let's discuss.
So that is something you could discuss at your Seder. No mitzvah is greater than redeeming the captives. And how does that play out, given what's happened with our 59 captives, hostages that are still there? And why is it more important? And what is the link of that to Pesach? Could be great discussion around your table. A second question, and maybe I can just if I figure out how to put them in the chat, then you can have them. Somebody read number 2.
On her article, My Children Are Drowning, Compassion and Loss at the Seder Table, Rabbi Hara Person asks us to hold compassion for Israelis and Palestinians' rage, grief, and sadness at the same moment. What does that mean for you? How is that possible?
That might work at some Seders. It might not work at other Seders. But it's really that, can you hold compassion for Israelis and Palestinians at the same moment, taken from that section of the Haggadah, my children are drowning and I'm crying with them.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2 speaks to me regarding our politics. A great I had an awakening Wednesday night at the Women's Seder with someone that I like very, very much. And I found out, I mean, I'm just being honest, that she was an enormous Trump supporter, loves him. And I had a lot of trouble with that when I came home. And this speaks to me because I have compassion and I recognize that she's a good person, a really good person. And what she believes, and what I believe, I believe. So it's kind of a confessional. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Spoke to me.
And question number 3, somebody else?
This is Lynn. How did our ancestors, keep the faith? Given the wars of our time and the distress in Israel and the U.S. daily, how do we keep the faith?
So that is the question for our time. We're going to be sitting at Seder with family members, friends that we agree with, that we don't agree with, but we're all going through this chaos together. How do we keep faith in each other, in our community, in God? Howard?
I think it's interesting, and this, I mean, I'll only just comment on it, that people are having troubles, are struggling with the idea that someone who they had previously considered to be a very wonderful person turned out to be a Trump supporter. They're struggling with that. But we're not struggling with saying we should have compassion not only with the Jews who were attacked by the Palestinians, but also the Palestinians who attacked the Jews. We should have compassion with the Palestinians. I can't understand how, I mean, I would like to understand how people think. I don't even know how I think. So it's interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. David Caden.
Well, you posed the question, how do we keep the faith, not how do we have compassion? So how do we keep the faith? The only thing I could think of is for our history, the Jewish people's history, and before we were Jews, but together, we've suffered from discrimination, annihilation, etc., and against all odds as well. And so we've survived. And I think the faith, it's something intangible and it's hard to do when we're personally experiencing it. And I'm sure the families of the hostages, who has been a year and a half or however, however long it is specifically, how would they keep faith, even though they know that there's been hostages, kidnapped by other peoples throughout our lives. So I think it's having faith in God. And it's certainly hard to do. It just may be, I don't know, that's all I can say. How do we keep the faith? How do we keep the faith is having faith in God.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, here we sit a week before Pesach, which is, standing at the shore of the sea. Do we walk in with Nachshon, this guy who just didn't know what he was doing, and help split the sea? Because we say we're going to put one foot in front of the other. And when I think of this, I think of my own parents, my mother from Germany, and my dad was from Vienna, Austria, and they were 19 when they left their countries and had no choice. And they were very lucky. Did they know anything? My father used to say, I came with nothing. I didn't know anything. You figure it out. And you just put one foot in front of the other. My teacher is a woman named Sheila Weinberg. She's a Reconstructionist rabbi. And she talks about the Jewish people being a fall down, get up people. We have fallen down so many times and we keep getting up. Our theology is a fall down, get up theology. And that is what Pesach is. We were slaves, the lowest of the low, and we have come through that. And to be free people, to be able to help other people, to be able to stand up for ourselves and help other Jews and non-Jews because of the values that we hold. May we have a Pesach that is a time to come through this with faith. I'm not going to be with you next week. Rabbi Susan Nanis is going to be here. I'm going to be with my son and grandchild at Camp Ramah for, for like 5 days of Pesach. So, we'll be seeing Passover through the eyes of a 7-year-old. And I'm excited. So, I'm conscious of the time. Hannah, if you can figure out how to put those questions in the chat, otherwise I'll send them to Hannah and she can send them out. I want to be able to take a moment so we can, first of all, extend healing prayers to those who are in need of healing. And extend our hearts to those who are still captives in Israel and in other parts of the world. Implant understanding in the heart of the captive. May they return the captives in body and in spirit. God grant wisdom to the Israeli Defense Forces that they may secure freedom for others and for themselves without loss of life. Grant strength of spirit and courage to all the sons and daughters of Abraham and Sarah to release the bonds of captivity and allow us all to live in freedom. They shall call upon me, Karateni, Va'ane imo, and I will be with them in distress. I will rescue them and honor them. And together we say,
Amen.
Amen.
Can I interrupt? If anyone is friends with Melanie Elkov, I just got a text that her husband died last night.
Oh,
So I just wanted to let you know. When I get information, I'll send it out.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you write it in the chat, please, Cindy?
I just know that he passed away. I don't have any information.
Okay, so you'll let the rabbis know, or they
I
will.
already texted Susan Nanis.
Thank you. Okay. So speaking of that, it's time for our Kaddish list. It's tradition to ask those in mourning and experiencing outside to rise. If you can, those who have passed away during the past month, Rabbi Stanley Davids, Herman Jacobs, Clara Kleinman, Harry Croft, Lauren Lux, Helena Nath, Don Reingold, and those who died in the line of duty. We recall them and wish their families strength as well. These are the yard sites that have occurred during the past week. Nate Adlin, Barbara Altman, Winifred Anderson, Ellie Moses Atty, George Rachamim Banashevha, Cindy Bender, Evan Bennett, Joseph Barrow, Ronald Blumkin, Stuart Blumkin, Eric Birkin, Paul Shan, Ben Cohn, Betty Stein Coleman, Tim Dineen, Devorah Dissner, Elliot Dissner, David Eidiger, Evelyn Eigler, Victor Eppert, Musa Farhadi, Max Fields, Dave Fox, my dad, Ruth Fromovich, Yael Galperin, Marcia Gelfand, Gladys Ginsberg, Nicholas Gluckin, Paul Goldberg, Sophia Gray Goldman, Burton Goldwater, David Gordon, Elizabeth Gottlieb, Charles Greenberg, Mark Greenstein, Milton Gumpert, Nura Habibian, Eleanor Holly M. Rose Hamburger, Theodore Hartstein, Judith Heim, Adolf Hoffman, Hyman Hoffman, Ruth Hoffman, Rita Howard, Regina Amarco, Judy Jaffe, Inez Johnson, Fleming Josephson, Edith Kana, Beverly Kay, Helen Kelson, Mark David Kessler, Manny Kirshner, Sally Cobreen, Mary Kraut, Sarah Kraut, Richard Coolwin, Paul Lamport, Wendy Landis, Margot Lee, Charles Lieber, Rose Linker, Gilbert Leiser, William Lowenberg, Alice Rose Malin, Sandy Sackett Mandler, Thelma Marshall, Marcus Marin, Belle Miller, Eleonora Midland, Samuel Minter, Milton Noodleman, Nathan Nordell, Kanahababa Norman, Ronald Onken, Jeremy Orlando, Rosalind Ostrovsky, Nehemiah Persoff, Ernst Phillips, Grace Pollock, Arno Prince, Louis Riesman, Lily Resnick, Joseph David Rosen, Myron Rosenbach, Arnold Rosenthal, Ethel Rothman, Grace Rubenstein, Reva Sandler, Bernard Schiff, James Schlesinger, Rose Schneider, Shirley Schwartz, Rosina Scher, Leah Siegel, Linda Geller Silverman, Harry Silverstein, Odin Silverstein, Inga Smerdisman, Edmund Smoke, Stephen Sturman, Herschel Tenenbaum, Marie Taub, Eleanor Uslan, Leah Valner, Norman Wachman, Claire Weiner, Francis Weiner, Elsa Weiss, Rochelle Wyckoff. Are there any additional names to add to the Kaddish list today? We'll join together for Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'yalma tivra kirotei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha v'richu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min maya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Otzer shalom b'mamav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God grant peace in the high places and bring peace into our world, our homes, and our hearts. And together we say, amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Have a good beginning of Pesach.
Hag
You
Sameach.
too.
Bye. Hag
Hag
Sameach.
Sameach. Hag Pesach Sameach.
Thanks so much,
You're welcome. Thank you. Take good care.
You.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Helen. Sei gesund.
Have fun
You
in
too.
camp. Have fun in camp, Rabbi.
Thank you. Take good care. Shabbos. Have a good Pesach.
You too.
Can't get out of here. Where are we?